Welcome to G Fun Facts Online. Today we're diving into a story that starts with lizard venom and ends with a multi-billion-dollar medical revolution that's changing millions of lives. We're talking about Ozempic and Mounjaro. You've seen the headlines, you've heard the celebrity buzz, but what is the real science behind these game-changing drugs? How do they actually work? And what are the risks lurking behind the hype? Let's get into it. The story of these incredible drugs doesn't start in a modern pharma lab, but with an observation made over 100 years ago. In the early 20th century, scientists noticed a curious phenomenon. When you give a person glucose orally, their body produces a much bigger surge of insulin than if you inject the same amount of glucose directly into their bloodstream. This suggested that the gut itself was playing an active role, sending hormonal signals to the pancreas to prepare for the incoming sugar. They called these mysterious signals incretins. For decades, the identity of these incretins remained a puzzle. It wasn't until the 1970s that scientists isolated the first one, a hormone called glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide, or GIP. This was exciting, but it hit a wall. GIP's effect was found to be severely blunted in people with type 2 diabetes, limiting its therapeutic potential. The real game changer came in the 1980s with the identification of the second incretin hormone, glucagon-like peptide 1, or GLP-1. A team of researchers, including Joel Habener, Svetlana Mojave, and Jens-Juul Holst, made a series of crucial discoveries. They found that GLP-1 was a potent stimulator of insulin release, but it did so in a glucose-dependent manner. This is a critical safety feature. It means the hormone only works when blood sugar is high, dramatically reducing the risk of hypoglycemia, or dangerously low blood sugar, which is a common side effect of older diabetes drugs. They also discovered that GLP-1 suppresses glucagon, a counter-hormone that tells the liver to raise blood sugar. And most importantly, they found that GLP-1's insulin-stimulating action was preserved in people with type 2 diabetes. This made it a perfect therapeutic target. There was just one massive hurdle. Native human GLP-1 has a half-life of only 1 to 2 minutes in the body. An enzyme called DPP-4 rapidly degrades it, making it useless as a practical drug. The challenge was clear. How do you harness the power of GLP-1 in a form that could last long enough to be a medicine? The answer came from one of the most unlikely places imaginable: the venom of the Gila monster, a large, slow-moving lizard native to the southwestern United States and Mexico. In the 1990s, an endocrinologist at the Bronx VA Medical Center, Dr. John Eng, was systematically screening animal venoms for new hormones. He discovered a peptide in the Gila monster's saliva, which he named EXENDIN4. This compound was fascinating because it was about 53% structurally similar to human GLP-1. But it had a key advantage. Due to its unique structure, it was naturally resistant to that DPP-4 enzyme that so quickly destroys human GLP-1. This gave it a much longer duration of action in the body. Dr. Eng's discovery paved the way for the development of the very first GLP-1 receptor agonist drug, exenatide, brand name Byetta. It was a synthetic version of the lizard venom peptide. When the FDA approved it in 2005 for type 2 diabetes, it was a breakthrough, but it still required twice-daily injections. The race was on. Pharmaceutical companies began pouring billions into developing longer-acting and more potent GLP-1 agonists. This led to once-daily liraglutide, known as Victoza, and then the true blockbusters, the once-weekly injections. These included dulaglutide, brand name Trulicity, and the drug that would soon become a household name, semaglutide, branded as Ozempic for diabetes, which hit the market in 2017. These newer drugs offered far greater convenience, and as the clinical trials rolled in, it became clear they also offered even more impressive results. Let's zoom in on exactly how Ozempic and its weight loss version, Wegovy, perform their magic. The active ingredient, semaglutide, is an incredibly effective mimic of our natural GLP-1 hormone. Its mechanism is a masterclass in metabolic control. First, it binds to GLP-1 receptors on the beta cells of the pancreas. These are the cells that produce insulin. Semaglutide essentially puts them on high alert, telling them to release insulin as soon as they detect rising blood sugar from a meal. The glucose-dependent part is key. No high sugar, no insulin release. Second, it works on the pancreas alpha cells which produce glucagon. Glucagon is like the gas pedal for sugar production in the liver. Semaglutide tells the alpha cells to ease off, reducing glucagon secretion and thereby lowering the liver's output of glucose. Third, and this is a big one for weight loss, it significantly slows gastric emptying. It holds food in your stomach for longer. This physiological change creates a prolonged feeling of fullness or satiety. People on the drug often report eating much smaller portions and feeling satisfied for hours. Fourth, it crosses the blood-brain barrier and acts directly on appetite centers in the hypothalamus. It dials down the signals for hunger and food cravings, particularly for high-fat, high-sugar foods. It's a comprehensive attack on the complex systems that regulate blood sugar and body weight. If Ozempic is a comprehensive attack, then Mounjaro, with its active ingredient tirzepatide, is an all-out blitz. Tirzepatide is the first and only approved medication that is a dual agonist. It hits two different hormone receptors, GLP-1 and GIP. Remember GIP? The first incretin hormone discovered back in the 70s? For a long time, it was considered less important for diabetes therapy. But scientists at Eli Lilly discovered that activating both GLP-1 and GIP receptors simultaneously creates a powerful synergistic effect. It's what they call a twincretin. This dual-action approach enhances everything GLP-1 does on its own. It leads to an even more robust and fine-tuned insulin response to meals. Beyond that, studies suggest tirzepatide also directly improves insulin sensitivity, meaning the body's cells become more responsive to the insulin that is produced, making it work more efficiently. This combined effect on both insulin secretion and sensitivity is why it often leads to even greater reductions in A1C, the key measure of long-term blood sugar control. And on the weight loss front, this dual agonism appears to have an even more profound effect on the brain's appetite regulation centers and on how the body processes and stores fat, leading to the chart-topping weight loss figures we see in its clinical trials. The numbers from the clinical trial programs are, frankly, hard to believe. They represent a paradigm shift in what we thought was possible with medication. Let's start with semaglutide, the drug in Ozempic and Wegovy. Its weight loss trials were called the STEP program, which stands for Semaglutide Treatment Effect in People with Obesity. In the landmark STEP 1 trial, which involved over 900 adults with obesity but not diabetes, those taking the 2.4 milligrams dose of semaglutide lost an average of 14.9% of their initial body weight over 68 weeks. The placebo group lost just 2.4%. Even more impressively, a third of the people on semaglutide lost at least 20% of their body weight, and more than half lost 15% or more. For people with type 2 diabetes, who historically have a harder time losing weight, the results were still remarkable. In the STEP 2 trial, they lost an average of 9.6%. But the trials also revealed something crucial. In STEP 4, participants who were switched to a placebo after 20 weeks on the drug regained a significant portion of the weight they'd lost. This highlights that obesity is a chronic disease that requires ongoing treatment, just like high blood pressure. Then came Mounjaro, or tirzepatide, and its SURMOUNT trial program. The results were even more staggering. In SURMOUNT 1, which looked at individuals with obesity but without diabetes, the highest dose of tirzepatide led to an average weight loss of 20.9% over 72 weeks. That's an average of 52 pounds lost. A jaw-dropping 57% of participants on the highest dose lost 20% or more of their body weight. The SURPASS-2 trial put the two titans head-to-head. It directly compared tirzepatide with the 1 mg dose of semaglutide in patients with type 2 diabetes. The results were definitive. At all 3 doses tested, tirzepatide led to greater reductions in blood sugar and significantly more weight loss than semaglutide. A real-world study confirmed these findings, showing that patients on tirzepatide were far more likely to achieve major weight loss milestones of 5%, 10%, and 15% compared to those on semaglutide. Perhaps the most exciting finding is that the benefits go far beyond the scale. For decades, the holy grail of diabetes treatment was a drug that not only controlled sugar, but also protected the heart. GLP-1 agonists have delivered. The landmark SELECT trial was a game-changer. It studied thousands of people who had obesity and pre-existing heart disease, but not diabetes. It found that Wegovy reduced the risk of a major cardiovascular event, like a heart attack or stroke, by a stunning 20%. This proved the drug's heart protective benefits are independent of its effects on blood sugar. Mounjaro is showing similar promise, having improved outcomes in patients with a specific type of heart failure. These aren't just metabolic drugs anymore. They are now frontline therapies for cardiovascular risk reduction. The unprecedented power of these drugs has propelled them from the pharmacy shelf to the center of popular culture. The Ozempic effect is a full-blown societal phenomenon. It's been fueled by a perfect storm of factors: celebrity endorsements, viral social media trends, and a deep-seated societal obsession with thinness. Celebrities like Oprah Winfrey, Tracy Morgan, and Amy Schumer have openly discussed using GLP-1 medications for weight management. Their stories have been powerful in reframing obesity as a chronic disease rather than a moral failing, helping to destigmatize the use of medication. However, this has also created an intense, almost frantic public demand. On platforms like TikTok and Instagram, the hashtag Ozempic has billions of views. A whole new genre of GLP-1 influencers has emerged, documenting every step of their weight loss journeys, sharing side effect tips, and celebrating their results. While this can create community and share valuable user experiences, it also risks spreading medical misinformation and promoting the drugs for purely cosmetic purposes, often without medical supervision. This intense popularity has fueled a surge in off-label prescribing. Off-label use, where a doctor prescribes a drug for something other than its FDA-approved indication, is legal and common. But the scale of it with Ozempic, a diabetes drug for cosmetic weight loss, is unprecedented. This has sparked a fierce ethical debate among doctors, ethicists, and patients. It creates a direct conflict. Should a doctor prescribe a medication to someone who wants to lose 20 pounds, when that same prescription could be taking a dose away from a patient with type 2 diabetes who needs it to control their blood sugar and prevent long-term complications? It also exposes deep inequities in our healthcare system. With a price tag often exceeding $1, $300 per month without insurance, these drugs are largely accessible only to the wealthy. This creates a two-tiered system of care, where those who can afford it can buy their way to better metabolic health and a body type that aligns with societal ideals, while many who need it most for medical reasons are left behind. For all their revolutionary benefits, this new era in medicine is not without its shadows. The most common side effects for both Mounjaro and Ozempic are gastrointestinal. Nausea is the big one, followed by diarrhea, vomiting, and constipation. These effects are dose-dependent, usually worst when you start the drug or increase your dose. For most, they are manageable and lessen over time, but for a minority of patients, they can be severe enough to stop treatment. There are also rarer, more serious potential side effects that are monitored closely, including an increased risk of pancreatitis and gallbladder problems. And there's a black box warning about a potential risk of thyroid C-cell tumors, though this has primarily been observed in rodent studies, and the risk in humans is considered low. But beyond the drug's own side effect profile, its very success has created new problems. The skyrocketing demand has completely overwhelmed the supply chain. Manufacturers simply can't make the drugs fast enough. This has led to persistent, rolling shortages of Mounjaro, Zepbound, Ozempic, and Wegovy across the country. These shortages create immense frustration and anxiety for patients who rely on them. Imagine finally finding a medication that works for you, only to be told at the pharmacy that it's out of stock indefinitely. This supply crisis has also given rise to a dangerous and poorly regulated industry: compounded drugs. Compounding pharmacies can legally make copies of drugs during a shortage. However, these compounded versions are not FDA approved. They do not undergo any of the rigorous testing for safety, efficacy, quality, or purity that the brand-name drugs do. The FDA has issued multiple urgent warnings about the dangers of using compounded semaglutide or tirzepatide. They've received numerous reports of adverse events, some requiring hospitalization. Some of these compounded drugs have been found to contain different, unstudied salt forms of the active ingredients, like semaglutide sodium, which may have completely different effects and risks. In the worst cases, they may have the wrong dosage, no active ingredient at all, or be contaminated with harmful substances. The message from regulators is clear. If you are getting these drugs from an online clinic, a med spa, or any source other than a state-licensed pharmacy dispensing the official FDA-approved product, you are taking a significant risk. So where do we go from here? The GLP-1 revolution is just getting started. The success of Ozempic and Mounjaro has kicked off a new arms race in pharmaceuticals. Oral versions are already available, removing the need for injections, and companies are developing next-generation drugs that target 3 or even 4 different hormonal pathways at once, promising even greater results. These drugs have fundamentally rewritten the playbook for treating obesity and type 2 diabetes. They've given us a powerful tool to combat 2 of our biggest public health crises, but they've also forced us to confront difficult questions about cost, access, equity, and the very definition of health and beauty in our society. The story of Mounjaro and Ozempic is more than just science. It's a reflection of our time, a fascinating intersection of medicine, culture, and economics. Thanks for tuning in to G Fun Facts Online.